Are Manchester United about to spend their way out of trouble? Arsenal spent big on Sanchez, but is there more to come? And City and Chelsea may be title favourites, but are they about to balance the books? Joining me today are Goal UK Chief Editor Sam Lyon and Goal Correspondent Greg Stobart. I'm Aidan Magee and this is Transfer Talk. It's been another frantic summer of transfer activity in the Premier League. I want to start with Manchester United. They got off to the worst possible start with that home defeat against Swansea. What do they have to do now in the remaining days and weeks of the transfer window to turn themselves back into title contenders?
Yeah, Aidan, you're right. It was a disastrous start and a real reality check for Manchester United. I think some people at the club got a little bit complacent over the summer. They got Louis van Gaal in as manager. They were very good in pre-season, but that was a disaster against Swansea. And now they've got less than 2 weeks to sort it out. If they don't sign a few players, and they've got the money to do it, if they don't sign a few players, they've got no chance of finishing in the top four in a very competitive Premier League season.
Go on then, Sam, throw some names at me.
Well, that's the encouraging thing. I think that they've known all summer that they do need to strengthen. They looked at the likes of Bastian Schweinsteiger earlier in the summer. That wasn't a deal that could be done. They looked at Tony Kroos. They opted against that deal. They're looking at those top-level players because that is the calibre of signing that's going to strengthen what is at the moment, as Greg said, an unbalanced squad.
From what Sam says there, Greg, it sounds very much to me and to probably everybody else watching, including lots of United fans, that they're dithering, just as they were accused of doing last summer.
Yeah, it's scandalous that they haven't done more in the transfer market. After last season, especially finished 7th, 22 points off top spot. They brought in a £30 million teenager on ridiculous wages, and Ander Herrera, who they should have signed a year ago under David Moyes. So Ed Woodward in particular needs to prove that he's capable of leading a club like Manchester United now, because he's replaced a very shrewd operator in David Gill and he's done a very poor job so far. So he's got a couple of weeks to show that he can handle the pressure and bring people to Manchester United. It reminds me a lot of Arsenal's first game against Aston Villa last season. There was this huge air of negativity around the club. They went and they splashed out the money on Mesut Ozil. It almost didn't matter how much they spent. And I can see Manchester United doing something similar. They're going to throw money at it now because it's a big problem. And for me, Angel Di Maria would be the perfect signing to get, just to give the whole club a huge boost, because it's been a miserable couple of years now.
Well, I think that's Greg's named one there in Angel Di Maria. I think he would be the perfect signing for Manchester United. Louis van Gaal has bemoaned the lack of wingers. He needs attacking players, he needs attacking talent. He believes out wide. I think Angel Di Maria would certainly tick that box. And another player, of course, is Arturo Vidal. How closely Manchester United are monitoring him depends on who you speak to at the moment. I think, but he is exactly, for my money, the sort of player they need to sign. That strength in midfield, an eye for a pass. I simply can't see them going through the rest of the season with Darren Fletcher and Ander Herrera as their first choice central midfield pairing. I don't think it's good enough for a title challenge. I don't think it's good enough for a Champions League place challenge.
OK, if I could just turn our attention just elsewhere to the Premier League. Greg, let's look at Liverpool. Somebody said to me they've sold Elvis and bought the Beatles, but do you still think there's one extra signing to make?
Well, we said that about Tottenham last year and it didn't work out. So let's wait a few months before we judge Liverpool's transfer business. For me, they needed one big marquee signing to replace Luis Suarez, and they haven't done it yet. They've done well, but not enough. And I do worry that Liverpool are a Daniel Sturridge injury away from being in big trouble, because they'll have only Ricky Lambert to turn to. So the big signing they need is a striker. I don't think they're going to get a top quality striker, but someone, a squad player who can fill in when needed.
Who's that going to be, Sam?
Well, you know, I was going to say that you look at the players again that they've been linked with in recent weeks. Radamel Falcao, Edinson Cavani. I don't think they're going to be at Anfield. I think they're wildly optimistic. What we do know is that Brendan Rodgers hasn't taken his eye off the ball just in searching for a marquee signing. He's looking at youth as well. He's very keen on Fulham's Patrick Roberts. That's the sort of striker they can certainly bring in. Is he good enough to help them this season? Well, our information is that he's going to stay on Fulham on loan anyway. So, you know, they're definitely a striker short for me to launch a concerted campaign.
For me, I'd certainly do Samuel Eto'o on a year deal, or someone like Wilfried Bony for 20 million, because, like, as I said, they can't just rely on Daniel Sturridge all season.
That would make sense, wouldn't it, Bony? Good record in the Premier League last season.
Proven player in the Premier League, decent price, very strong. He'd be happy to come in and out. They've got the Champions League this year. They've got plenty of games. I think it'd be a pretty clever signing. I thought Loic Remy would be a clever signing, and they pulled out of that one.
But Bony would walk over broken glass, I think, to come to Anfield as well, wouldn't he? So I think that makes sense on all.
Makes a difference when a player really wants to play for you as well, doesn't it? OK, so looking at Arsenal, Sam, they made a big signing early on in the window. Still more work to do, though, do you feel, in the remainder of the window?
Well, the signing that they've brought in is Alexis Sanchez, and he is a phenomenal signing. Let's make that clear. He's exactly what Arsene Wenger likes in a player. He's versatile, he's fast, he's got an eye for goal. He will certainly strengthen them going forward. But they still have work to do. They need a signing in defence, and they need a signing in midfield as well, I think.
They've been crying out for a central midfielder for 3, 4, 5 years now. They need that defensive screen in front of the back four, because Mikel Arteta, he might be able to do it at home against teams like Crystal Palace, but against the big sides, and they were very poor against the top sides last year, he's not good enough to screen the defence. I have no idea why they haven't made more of a push for Morgan Schneiderlin. I think he'd be perfect. Perhaps they're waiting for Sami Khedira to become available, and if they could get someone that good, then they're real title contenders.
Sam, do you think they need more defensive reinforcements?
They do. They've got the Greek international Manolas coming in. I think again he's going to provide that strength in depth. I don't actually think he'll start too many games, and I think he will provide that defensive cover that obviously Thomas Vermaelen and Sale will leave. But I agree entirely with Greg. I don't know why they've not made it more of a push for Morgan Schneiderlin. I think he is exactly the sort of player that Arsenal have been missing, not just for this season coming, but for seasons past.
Let's take a look at Tottenham now, just a couple of miles away in North London. Good start for them at the weekend, a late win against West Ham. Haven't been overly active in the window though.
It's been a pretty quiet summer for Tottenham. They've only brought in 3 players, and I think the focus this summer with the new manager Mauricio Pochettino has been getting the best out of the players who arrived last summer and didn't play very well at all, never settled. So that's a priority. They've got a huge squad. Before they even think about really bringing in reinforcements, they need to sell 5, 6, 7 players, but they're certainly looking at Schneiderlin, of course, Musacchio from Villarreal, two players who can go straight into the first team, but the priority really is to trim the squad.
Will there be much interest in that squad? It was very flabby last season, wasn't it?
Well, I think, Mauricio Pochettino is singing from the Daniel Levy hymn sheet at the moment. He says he wants to improve the squad that he's taken on. There was a lot of money spent last summer, but also he's inherited, as you say, a very bloated squad. You're looking at the likes of Michael Dawson, even Roberto Soldado, and the sort of fringe players that probably wouldn't sit in Mauricio Pochettino's ideal 11. I think he's gone on record to say that as many as 8, 9, even 10 or 11 players could be available for sale. Daniel Levy, notorious for doing business late in the window, of course. I think we're more likely to see a fire sale than we are big money spent on incoming players.
Spurs will be very busy in the last week of the window, in and outs probably, they always are, and there are plenty of players, Premier League proven, who could do a decent job there, and they've got so many central midfielders, likes of Lewis Holtby, Capoue, Chadley, Townsend, Lennon, Dawson you mentioned earlier. They've got so many players who could all do a decent job at any Premier League club, so I think a lot of them will be on their way out.
What about Chelsea? Everyone's saying they've done some outstanding business. They're talked about as being among the favourites to win the Premier League for the first time in 5 years. Is there still more deals to be done by Mourinho between now and the end?
I don't think so. I think he said he's very happy with what he's got. They've signed some tremendous players, and they certainly started off in superb fashion against Burnley on Monday night, and I think Fabregas is going to be the signing of the season for me. Superb summer of work for Chelsea. I think they're well set as Premier League favourites. The only business we can really expect them to do is to sell Petr Cech, which would be very sad, of course, but I think when a player's given that much service to a club, you treat him with respect, and if he wants to go and play football, you let him go.
Just finally, why isn't anybody talking about Manchester City? They seem to have become what Manchester United were up until 2 or 3 years ago, quietly signing big-name players.
Yeah, well, for a start, they were the champions last season, so they didn't have an awful lot of work to do in the first place. They have a very strong squad. I think Fernando looks like a very clever signing. I think in an ideal world, Manuel Pellegrini would have liked to bring in one really big name, but of course they've been handicapped by their financial fair play fine, and I think that's affected their business over the summer.
Would you go along with that, Sam? I mean, their aim now has to be to try and retain the title, only the third Premier League side to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Obviously that's their aim. I mean, let's not forget as well that they are desperate for success in Europe as well. I think they have the strength in numbers to challenge in Europe. They have a quality enough first team to challenge in Europe. I don't think actually that domestically they can compete with Chelsea for my money just to make that concerted push for the title.
But even though they're champions already, they're defending?
I agree. I agree that they have a strong squad, and I agree that it's probably going to be a two-horse race. I'm just probably in awe, if I'm honest, with the signings that Chelsea have made, the strength of their squad. I'm not entirely convinced that Manchester City can compete with that. And as you referenced before, I think the main bit of business Manchester City have to do is to ship some names out. They've got a lot of fringe players in terms of Scott Sinclair, Micah Richards, even who is a fabulous defender, Nastasic. He looks like he's going to be on his way out. So there's going to be a lot of dealings left to be done through the exit door at Manchester City. Obviously, that's not going to strengthen any kind of title challenge, but at the same time, as Greg said, that they're one perhaps super signing away from the title challenge.
Okay, thanks guys, really enjoyed that. Don't forget, if you do want to contribute to the transfer debate, you can head over to Goal or use the hashtag GoalTZ.